Mr. Flores, first of all, thanks for your service. I think I counted 37 years or so.
Correct.
So you've been on the front line for a long time. Appreciate your stepping into this role. What I want to do is follow up on a line of questioning that I had with the Secretary when she testified about the cost benefit of a border wall. And let me give you some context. First of all, I've been to the border 3 times myself. I've talked with many of your officers on the ground. I believe, and I believe it may be the consensus of some of the officers on the ground, that we definitely need to rehabilitate, expand, and extend the border wall in some parts, but not all 1,954 miles. I'm not going to speak for them, but that's my conclusion. So what I'm interested in is understanding the administration's, where the administration is trying to go and what are the consequences of doing that. So my understanding is that in FY 2024, continued to 2025, Customs and Border Protection was funded at about $19.6 billion. The skinny budget doesn't specifically call out CBP, but it's a level-funded budget, and I don't think that there is an assumption of an increase for CBP in the skinny budget. But reconciliation clearly front-loads CBP to the tune of about $64.9 billion, which is 3 times more than the annual funding, of which $46.5 billion is to build the border wall. So that means that of the entire reconciliation budget, 71.6% is allocated to a border wall in the CBP, which is twice the annual budget of all of CBP, as contrasted with $2.8 billion to border surveillance, which I think we would all agree is also an important part of actually securing our border. My question to Secretary Noem was this. That's a heck of a lot of money to put into a border wall. And if we've seen such a drastic decrease in entries into this country, which is good news, by the way, congratulations to everybody that pulled that off. But if we've got this under control from a non-1954-mile border wall, then why are we investing that much in a border wall? And so the subsidiary part of the question is, does that $46.5 billion assume, what's the assumption under that? How much wall does that buy, $46.5 billion?
So, Congressman, thank you for the question. So within CBP, in our evaluation, we've recognized needs in regards to expanding border walls, not just the border wall system. So infrastructure is one thing. When you talk about infrastructure, an actual physical infrastructure, a wall, and you can talk about border roads and access roads, which become equally as important. But the border wall system also includes technology. So that means we're talking about fiber optic cable, we're talking about sensors, we're talking about cameras, autonomous cameras, and that all combining together to systemize just a border wall system in what we're doing. So what we have planned for in regards to needs that we have, so based on support from the committee, operationalizing what some of those needs are in regards to border wall, border barrier, both primary wall and secondary wall,
Okay.
but it includes the technology as well.
All right, cool. And I'm fine with all of your technology, and I'm fine with all of that, border roads, and I'm fine with everything else in terms of, taking care of our agents. But I guess my specific question is, what's the assumption as to a physical barrier, an extension of that barrier? Because $46.5 billion is a lot of money to spend when the administration says that it has solved the problem already. So my question is, from a cost-benefit perspective, what assumption are we making with the border wall in that 46.5? The wall itself.
So the wall itself, we recognize the operational need and the funding in order to build it. We don't have the funding for that. We've used our current funding in order to build the current wall that we have either in some type of planning or construction phases.
I don't mean to, I'm really trying to get to how much wall did you put in to your projections of 46.5 billion? What is the assumption there? Is that the entire border? Is it half the border?
So it will not include the entirety of the border. So we have a little less than 2,000 miles along the border. So we recognize that there are areas, geographic areas and terrain out there where a border wall does not make sense for us.
Do you know how many of those miles you are assuming in that 46.5 billion number?
So in regards to primary border barrier, I can tell you that our operational need of what we've identified from a primary board barrier, we're about 700 miles of primary board
Okay, so
barrier.
that's the assumption in the 46.5 billion. You're
That's
gonna
what we
build
have in our
some-
planning so far, operational need.
And just quickly, what time frame does that assume? Because what you're doing is you're committing this appropriations committee to funding of that over time, which takes out of the other goals, which is why reconciliation and budgeting is a bad idea. What's the time frame? 10 years?
So what we have right now is just a planning stage of what our operational needs are based on whether or not funding is provided. When we get the funding, we will determine what the time frame is there. But we are working to shorten that time frame as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.